My name is Catherine, I'm 36 years old, and I stood completely alone in the federal courthouse while being sworn in as the youngest federal judge in our district's history. The empty seats where my parents should have been sitting felt like gaping wounds. After 20 years of sacrifice, sleepless nights in law school, and climbing from poverty to the federal bench, they chose their vacation cruise over my life's greatest achievement. When I finally turned my phone back on after the ceremony, 47 missed calls lit up my screen. Before we dive into this unbelievable story of family betrayal and finding my true worth, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you dealing with difficult family relationships too? Please hit that like button if you've ever felt forgotten by the people who should care most, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that'll remind you that you're never truly alone. Trust me, what happened after those 47 calls will leave you speechless. Let's get into how the most important day of my professional life became the day I discovered who my family really was. The alarm pierced through the darkness at 4 in the morning, but I'd been awake for at least an hour already, my mind racing with anticipation and nervous energy. This was it, the day I'd dreamed about since I was 12 years old, sitting in our cramped two-bedroom apartment, watching my mother cry over the stack of overdue bills while my father nursed his back injury from the factory accident. I reached for the framed photo on my nightstand, the one where all four of us were squeezed together on our threadbare couch, and remembered the promise I'd made that night. I'm going to be someone important, Mom. Someone who can help our family. Someone who makes you proud. She'd hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, whispering through her tears that I was already her everything. Getting ready felt surreal. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, carefully adjusting my new black robe for the first time. The weight of it on my shoulders felt right, felt earned. Every all-nighter during law school, every dollar scraped together for textbooks, every meal skipped to afford bar exam prep materials had led to this moment. But as I smoothed down the fabric, the silence in my apartment felt wrong. My parents had promised to fly in last night. They were supposed to be at my guest room right now, probably unable to sleep from excitement just like me. Mom had been talking about this day for months, about how she'd wear her special occasion dress, the blue one she'd worn to exactly 3 events in her life because it was too nice for everyday wear. At 6 o'clock, I checked my phone for the dozenth time. Nothing. No good morning text, no we're getting ready message, no missed call from Mom asking if I'd eaten breakfast. The silence was deafening. I dialed her number, listening to it ring once, twice, 3 times before going to voicemail. Hi Mom, just checking if you and Dad made it in safely last night. I know you were worried about the flight being delayed. Call me when you get this. Today's the big day. My voice cracked on the last words, but I pushed down the unease creeping up my spine. Dad's phone went straight to voicemail, which was odd because he always kept it charged and on, a habit from his days working security after the factory closed. Something made me open Facebook, maybe just to distract myself from the growing knot in my stomach. The first post on my feed felt like a physical blow. There they were, my parents, posted just 3 hours ago from the deck of a cruise ship. Mom in a flowing sundress and oversized sunglasses, Dad with his arm around her, both holding tropical drinks with little umbrellas. The caption read, Anniversary Cruise Day 3. Paradise found. Gerald surprised me with the premium drink package. The timestamp showed it was posted from the Caribbean, thousands of miles from the federal courthouse where their daughter was about to take her oath. My hand shook as I scrolled through more photos. They'd been posting for days. Pictures at the ship's formal dinner, by the pool, at various ports. How had I missed these? Then I remembered, I'd been so buried in preparation, reviewing ethical guidelines and procedural rules, that I hadn't checked social media all week. But surely they couldn't have forgotten. I'd reminded them last month, last week, sent them the official invitation with the courthouse address, the time, the dress code. I'd even offered to pay for their flights and hotel, though they'd insisted they could manage it. I called my brother Keith next, my voice barely steady. Keith, have you heard from Mom and Dad? They were supposed to be here for my swearing-in ceremony. The pause on the other end told me everything. Oh, that's today? I thought it was next month, Kat. They're on their anniversary cruise, remember? The one they booked like 2 years ago? 2 years ago. Before I'd even been nominated. Before the confirmation hearings. Before any of this was even a possibility. Keith, I've been telling everyone about this date for the past 6 months. I sent you all invitations. It's been on the family group chat calendar. Another pause. Yeah, well, you know how they are about their plans. They've been looking forward to this cruise forever. My sister Diane's response was even colder when I reached her. Catherine, you can't expect the world to revolve around your schedule. They've been planning this anniversary cruise since their 40th. It's their 42nd anniversary. This was the only time they could get the same ship and itinerary. I felt like I was in some alternate universe. Diane, I'm being sworn in as a federal judge today. This is literally a once-in-a-lifetime event. They promised they'd be here. Her sigh was audible through the phone. Well, maybe you should have checked with them before scheduling it during their cruise. You've always been self-centered like this. The word stung more than any physical blow could have. Self-centered? I'd spent my entire life trying to make them proud. Every achievement, every milestone had been as much for them as for me. I'd turned down a lucrative job offer in Seattle because Mom said she couldn't bear to have me so far away. I'd spent my first year's salary as a public defender paying off their credit card debt instead of my own student loans. I'd missed my best friend's destination wedding to attend Dad's minor surgery because he insisted he needed me there. Standing in my empty apartment, wearing my judge's robe like a costume for a play no one came to see, I made a decision. I'd done everything else alone, really. Yes, they'd been there physically sometimes, but emotionally? When I needed encouragement during the bar exam, Mom had been too busy with her book club. When I'd called Dad crying after losing my first big case, he'd told me maybe I wasn't cut out for this kind of pressure. Every step forward had been despite their doubts, not because of their support. Today would be no different. I straightened my shoulders, wiped the tears I hadn't realized were falling, and grabbed my keys. If they couldn't be bothered to show up for the biggest day of my professional life, then I'd face it the way I'd faced everything else, with my head held high and my heart breaking quietly where no one could see. The federal courthouse loomed before me, its granite columns catching the morning sun in a way that should have felt majestic but instead emphasized my solitude. As I walked through the security checkpoint, I could hear excited chatter echoing through the marble halls. Other nominees were already there, surrounded by small crowds of supporters. The Hendersons had what looked like 3 generations of family, complete with matching t-shirts that said Judge Henderson's crew in glittery letters. Maria Gonzalez was posing for photos with her parents, her mother adjusting her robe with tears streaming down her face. Even stern-faced Michael Chen was grinning as his elderly grandmother pinned a corsage to his lapel with shaking hands. Judge Harrison found me in the corner of the waiting room, pretending to review my notes for the 100th time. He'd been my mentor since my first day as a clerk, and he could read me like one of his carefully annotated legal briefs. Catherine, where's your family? I was looking forward to finally meeting the parents you've told me so much about. The lie came automatically. They're running a bit late. Flight delays. You know how it is. His kind eyes crinkled with concern. My wife is here with our daughters. They'd be honored to sit with you during the ceremony if your family doesn't make it in time. I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face. That's very kind, but I'm sure they'll make it. They wouldn't miss this. As I settled back into my corner, I couldn't help but scroll through my phone one more time. The family group chat was active, but not about my ceremony. Cousin Janet had posted photos from her son's Little League game. Aunt Ruth was sharing recipes for Thanksgiving, still 2 weeks away. And there, like a knife to the heart, was my mother's comment on a photo of my cousin's new puppy, so adorable. Reminds me of Princess when Catherine was little. We're having such a wonderful time on the cruise. Missing something important today, but marriage comes first. 22 years together deserve celebration, missing something important. That's what my federal judgeship investiture had become. Something important. Not my daughter's historic achievement. Not the culmination of decades of sacrifice and work. Just something important, easily dismissed for fruity drinks and shuffleboard. My vision blurred, and I stumbled toward the bathroom, locking myself in a stall as my carefully constructed composure finally shattered. The panic attack hit like a tidal wave. I gripped the sides of the stall, trying to remember the breathing exercises my therapist had taught me years ago. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Count to 4. Hold. Count to 4. Release. 10 minutes later, I emerged, having splashed cold water on my face and reapplied my makeup with shaking hands. A federal marshal was waiting outside the bathroom, his face creased with concern. Judge-designate Morrison? They're about to start seating people for the ceremony. Are you all right? We can postpone if you need a few minutes. The thought of delaying, of giving my parents even the slightest chance to claim I'd changed the time and that's why they missed it, steeled my resolve. I've waited my whole life for this, Marshal Jenkins. I'm ready. The ceremonial courtroom was packed with families, friends, and colleagues of the 5 of us being sworn in today. As we lined up to enter, I was acutely aware of being the only one without an entourage. The other nominees had people to adjust their robes one last time, to whisper last-minute encouragement, to take photos that would be framed and treasured. I had my phone on silent and a heart that felt too heavy for my chest. But as we walked in and I saw the massive American flag, the formal portraits of past judges, and felt the weight of history in that room, something shifted. This wasn't about them. It had never really been about them. This was about every client I'd fought for, every victim I'd sought justice for, every principle of law I'd sworn to uphold. When Chief Judge Reynolds called my name and I stepped forward to take the oath, my voice rang out clear and strong. I, Catherine Elizabeth Morrison, do solemnly swear that I will administer justice without respect to persons, and do equal right to the poor and to the rich, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon me as a United States District Judge under the Constitution and laws of the United States. So help me God. As I spoke those sacred words, I wasn't thinking about the empty seats where my family should have been. I was thinking about the full seats in my future courtroom, where I would serve justice with the same dedication that had brought me here. The official photographer's awkwardness when it came time for family photos was palpable. Judge Morrison, where would you like your family grouped for the formal portraits? I felt heat rise to my cheeks. They couldn't make it today. We can just do individual shots. The woman's professional smile faltered. Oh, of course. Let me adjust the lighting for singles. But Judge Harrison's wife Margaret wasn't having it. She swept over with her 3 daughters in tow, all accomplished women in their own right. Catherine dear, you simply must let us stand in. Harold has told us so much about you. Girls, come meet Judge Morrison. She clerked for your father when you were in high school, Jennifer. The kindness of strangers shouldn't have broken me, but it did. As Margaret arranged us all for the photo, her daughters chattering about their own careers and congratulating me, I felt tears threatening again. This is what family was supposed to feel like. This unconditional support, this joy in another's achievements, this showing up when it mattered. The photo would later show me beaming, surrounded by the Harrison women, and no one looking at it would guess that my own parents had chosen a cruise ship buffet over their daughter's federal judgeship ceremony. The reception afterward was torture disguised as celebration. I stood with my champagne flute, watching families toast their newly sworn judges, listening to proud speeches from fathers and tearful congratulations from mothers. I checked my phone discreetly. Still nothing from my parents. They had to know by now. Even if they'd somehow forgotten the date, surely someone had told them. But their social media remained active with cruise updates. A video of the evening's entertainment show. Photos of the towel animal left on their bed. Reviews of the ship's steakhouse. All posted within the hour. Just as I was planning my escape, a familiar voice called out from across the room. "Katie! There's my girl." Uncle Robert, my father's younger brother, was pushing through the crowd, his face flushed from hurrying. He was wearing his best suit, the one he'd bought for his daughter's wedding, and carrying a bouquet of yellow roses, my favorites. "I'm so sorry I'm late. Traffic from Philadelphia was murder. But I wouldn't miss this for the world." He pulled me into a bear hug, and I finally let myself cry into his shoulder. "They're not coming, are they?" he whispered. I shook my head against his chest. "They never planned to come, did they?" His silence was answer enough. As we found a quiet corner, Uncle Robert's revelations hit like physical blows. "Catherine, honey, I need to tell you something I probably should have said years ago. Your parents, they've always been jealous of your success. When you got into law school, your mother spent the entire family Easter dinner talking about how you'd probably drop out, that you were getting too big for your britches. When you passed the bar on the first try, your father told me you must have gotten lucky with the questions. Every achievement you've ever had, they've found a way to diminish it, to make it about them, to make themselves feel better about their own disappointments." I wanted to protest, to defend them, but the words wouldn't come because deep down, I knew he was right. Every success had been met with backhanded compliments. "Well, public defender isn't real law like corporate. Assistant U.S. attorney sounds fancy, but the pay isn't much. Federal judge is nice, but it's not the Supreme Court." Nothing was ever enough because my success highlighted what they saw as their own failures. Uncle Robert held my hand as the truth I'd spent years avoiding finally crystallized. They hadn't forgotten. They'd chosen to forget. They'd chosen to be anywhere else rather than watch their daughter achieve something they never could. The parking garage was dim and quiet after the brightness and noise of the reception, and I sat in my car for a moment, still processing Uncle Robert's words and the strange mix of triumph and abandonment coursing through my veins. With a deep breath, I finally turned my phone off airplane mode. The device immediately began vibrating so intensely it nearly jumped out of my hand. 47 missed calls. 89 text messages. The voicemail icon showed full. My parents' neighbor must have seen the local news coverage of the ceremony. Our small-town paper had done a feature story about their local girl makes good becoming the youngest federal judge in district history. The first voicemail was from my mother, her voice high-pitched and panicked in a way I'd only heard once before, when I'd been in a minor car accident in college. "Catherine Elizabeth Morrison, where are you? Why aren't you answering your phone? Mrs. Henderson from next door just showed me the newspaper. The ceremony was today? Why didn't you tell us it was today? Call me back immediately." The timestamp showed she'd left it 20 minutes into the ceremony. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was frantic about missing something she'd actively chosen to miss. My father's messages grew progressively angrier as I listened. First, "Catherine, this is your father. Call your mother back. She's very upset." Then, "This is completely unacceptable. How dare you go through with the ceremony without us?" By the fifth message, "You are the most selfish, ungrateful daughter. After everything we've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us? By sneaking around and having your ceremony while we're away? Your mother is in tears. The entire ship knows now because she's so upset. You've ruined our anniversary cruise." I almost laughed at that last part. I had ruined their cruise by becoming a federal judge on the date that had been set 6 months ago, that I'd reminded them about countless times, that was literally engraved on the official invitation sitting on their kitchen counter. The text messages were equally absurd. Diane had sent a dozen in rapid succession. "How could you? Mom is hyperventilating. The cruise medical staff is with her now. This is all your fault. You probably scheduled it during their cruise on purpose. You've always been jealous of their happiness. Some judge you'll make with no family values." Keith's messages tried a different manipulation tactic. "Cat, Mom's having chest pains. The ship doctor wants to airlife her to Miami. Is this what you wanted? For your big day to kill our mother? I knew this game. The mysterious chest pains that appeared whenever Mom didn't get her way. The same chest pains that miraculously disappeared when the attention shifted back to her. They'd played this card when I couldn't attend their vow renewal because of law school finals, when I'd missed Diane's baby shower for a trial, when I'd chosen to stay in town for Thanksgiving to help with an emergency case instead of driving 6 hours to see them. The cousin group chat was absolute chaos. The family had split into camps, and the messages were flying fast and furious. Cousin Janet, I can't believe Catherine would do this to Aunt Linda and Uncle Gerald. Cousin Marie. Are you serious right now? They knew about the ceremony. Linda literally commented about it on Facebook last week. Aunt Ruth, family comes first. Catherine should have waited. Cousin Tony, waited for what? For them to finish their 15th cruise? She's a federal judge. You don't postpone that because Mommy and Daddy wanted to play shuffleboard. Aunt Martha's voicemail was perhaps the most infuriating. Catherine, dear, I'm very disappointed in you. Your parents sacrificed everything to put you through school. The least you could have done was make sure they were there for your moment of glory. Your mother used to talk about seeing you sworn in as a judge all the time. How could you take that away from her? I wanted to scream. They hadn't put me through school. I'd taken out massive loans, worked 3 jobs, lived on ramen noodles and hope. The $5,000 they'd given me over 8 years of higher education had come with so many strings attached it looked like a marionette convention. Every dollar had been a loan in their minds, to be repaid not in money but in eternal gratitude and obedience. Among the chaos, a few messages stood out as beacons of sanity. My best friend Lisa, just saw the news coverage. You looked amazing. Where were your parents though? Please tell me they didn't pull their usual stunt. My law school mentor, Professor Williams, congratulations, Judge Morrison. I saw the live stream. You handled yourself with grace and dignity, as always. Don't let anyone dim this moment for you. My former colleague from the U.S. Attorney's Office, Fed Judge at 36. You're a rock star. Drinks on me when you get back to town. Then came the attempted video call from my parents. They were sitting on their cruise ship balcony, the sunset stunning behind them, both holding drinks. I let it ring through to voicemail, but they immediately tried again. And again. Finally, a text from Mom, answer the phone right now or we're calling the police to do a wellness check. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost funny. I texted back simply, I'm fine. The ceremony was beautiful. Enjoy your cruise. This triggered an avalanche of new calls and texts. My childhood friend Jennifer sent a much different kind of message. Kat, I watched the whole ceremony on the courthouse livestream. You were magnificent. Also, I did some social media stalking. Your parents posted photos from the ship's production of Mamma Mia at the exact time you were taking your oath. The timestamp doesn't lie. They knew. They chose the show. I'm so sorry. I pulled up their Facebook page, and there it was. Photos of them laughing, clapping, singing along to Dancing Queen while their daughter became one of the youngest federal judges in the nation. The contrast was so stark it felt surreal. Then came the message that made my blood run cold. My ex-husband Paul, who'd left me for his secretary while I was working 100-hour weeks as a junior prosecutor, had the audacity to text, saw the news about your ceremony. Guess Mommy and Daddy finally showed their true colors, huh? I always told you they only cared about themselves. Remember when they tried to convince you to quit law school and marry me instead? Bet you're wishing you'd listened now. At least you would have had someone there today. The fact that he might have been right about my parents didn't make his smug message any less infuriating. As I sat in my car scrolling through this digital avalanche of guilt trips, manipulations, and rare bits of support, patterns emerged that I'd spent years ignoring. My law school graduation that they'd missed for a Vegas trip they'd won in a radio contest. My first trial victory celebration they'd skipped because Dad had tickets to a baseball game. The engagement party they'd left early from because Mom didn't like the restaurant. Every major moment of my adult life had been marked by their absence or half-hearted presence, always with an excuse, always with a reason why something else was more important. Uncle Robert sent a follow-up text. I'm hosting a proper celebration dinner for you tomorrow night. My place, 7 o'clock. I'm inviting everyone who actually gives a damn about your incredible achievement. Your grandmother is flying in from Florida. She's furious with your parents, by the way. Says she didn't raise your father to be this way. The idea of Grandma Rose, all 4'11" of Irish-American fury, descending on this situation almost made me smile. But first, I had to face the music at home. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, watering her garden despite the late hour. She hurried over as I got out of the car. Judge Morrison. I saw you on the news. Where were your parents? I told them last week when I saw them that they must be so proud, and your mother said something about a cruise, but surely she didn't mean. I gently cut her off. They had a prior commitment, Mrs. Chen. But thank you for watching. It means a lot. Her face fell. Oh, honey. On today of all days? I could only nod, not trusting my voice. Inside my house, the congratulatory flowers from my secretary sat on the porch, a bright spot in the darkness. The card read, "To the best boss I've ever had. Today you became officially what you've always been, Your Honor. Love, Nancy." I brought them inside, put them in water, and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of the day. I'd achieved something remarkable, something I'd worked for my entire adult life, and the people who claimed to love me most had chosen a cruise ship buffet over being there. But as I looked at Nancy's flowers, at the texts from real friends, at Uncle Robert's dinner plans, I realized something. I hadn't been alone today. My parents had simply shown me who really mattered. And tomorrow, when they inevitably escalated their campaign of guilt and manipulation, I'd be ready. Because I was no longer the little girl desperate for their approval. I was Judge Catherine Morrison, and I'd earned that title with or without them. The next morning arrived with the subtlety of a hurricane. My doorbell rang at 6:45, jarring me from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. Still in my pajamas, I peered through the peephole to see my neighbor holding up her phone with my parents' faces filling the screen. "Catherine. Open this door right now. Mrs. Chen was kind enough to help us FaceTime since she won't answer our calls." Mom's voice screeched through Mrs. Chen's phone speaker. The poor woman looked mortified at being dragged into this drama. I opened the door just enough to address my neighbor. "Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry they're bothering you. I'll take the phone." She handed it over with an apologetic grimace and scurried back to her house. My parents' faces filled the screen, both of them red-faced and sitting in what looked like their cruise ship cabin. The walls behind them were covered in towel animals, a grotesque contrast to the volcanic eruption happening in real time. "How could you go through with it without us?" Mom wailed, tears streaming down her face in a performance worthy of daytime television. "We're your parents. We have rights." "Rights?" I heard myself laugh, a bitter sound I didn't recognize. "You had the right to be there. You had 6 months' notice. I sent you the official invitation. I called you monthly to remind you. I offered to pay for your flights. You chose a cruise. You chose dinner theater over your daughter's federal judgeship ceremony." Dad's face grew even redder. "We told you we had plans. That cruise was booked 2 years ago." The familiar dance of gaslighting was starting, but this time I had receipts. "Hold on, let me screen share something with you." I pulled up my meticulously organized folder labeled Ceremony Planning and started sharing my screen. "Here's the email I sent you both on March 15th with the date. You responded wouldn't miss it for the world. Here's the calendar invite from April that you accepted. Here are the text messages from May, June, July, August, September, and October where I confirmed you were coming. Here's Mom's comment on my Facebook post about the ceremony saying so proud. can't wait, dated 2 weeks ago. Here's the screenshot of you at the travel agent last week that Cousin Marie posted, showing you rescheduling something. So please, tell me again how you didn't know. The silence was deafening for about 3 seconds before the deflection began. Well, you should have reminded us again last week. Mom sputtered. You know how busy we are. And that cruise was for our anniversary. Do you know how hard it is to get the same ship and itinerary? Diane's face suddenly appeared in the frame. She must have been added to the call. Catherine, you need to apologize right now. Look what you've done to Mom. The ship doctor says her blood pressure is through the roof. You're literally killing her with your selfishness. Keith joined next, all 4 of them now crowded onto the screen like some demented Brady Bunch reunion. Cat, be reasonable. Just admit you should have checked with them one more time. You know how forgetful they can be. The gaslighting was so coordinated it was almost impressive. They'd had time to align their stories, to decide on the narrative where I was the villain who'd maliciously scheduled my federal judgeship ceremony to conflict with their vacation. You want to talk about killing someone? I shot back, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. Let's talk about Dad's heart attack that made me miss my law review interview. Funny how he was playing golf the next day. Or Mom's emergency surgery that had me driving home from my first year of law school, only to find out it was a routine colonoscopy she'd scheduled months before. Or Diane's miscarriage that required me to miss my moot court competition, except she wasn't even pregnant. You've cried wolf so many times that the wolf could be eating you alive and I'd assume it was another manipulation. The explosion was immediate. All 4 of them started shouting at once, their voices creating a cacophony of accusations, guilt trips, and revisionist history. But then something beautiful happened. The call suddenly included Grandma Rose, Uncle Robert, and several cousins. Apparently, Diane had added them thinking they'd pile on me, but she'd miscalculated badly. Linda Marie Morrison. Grandma Rose's voice cut through the chaos like a hot knife through butter. Despite being 83, she commanded attention like the Irish matriarch she was. You sit there on your fancy boat crying about missing Catherine's ceremony when you chose to miss it? I'm ashamed to call you my daughter-in-law. That girl has worked herself to the bone to achieve something extraordinary, and you're making it about you? Gerald, I raised you better than this. Uncle Robert chimed in, his usually jovial voice serious. I've kept my mouth shut for years, but enough is enough. Gerald, Linda, you've missed every important moment in Catherine's life. Her law school graduation. Her first trial win. Her engagement party. Hell, you left her wedding reception early because the Bears were playing. And each time, you've made her feel guilty for having the audacity to achieve something without centering it around your schedule. Cousin Marie, bless her, had receipts of her own. I'm screen sharing something right now. These are the photos from the travel agent last week. You can clearly see the date on the appointment screen. You went in to change your cruise dates after Catherine's reminder text. The agent's notes are visible. Clients want to ensure they're on cruise during November 8th to 10th to avoid family obligation. You deliberately rescheduled to miss the ceremony. The smoking gun hit like a bombshell. My parents' faces went from red to white. Mom tried to sputter a response, but Marie wasn't done. And here's the screenshot of Mom telling the agent, we thought she'd reschedule it for us. She always has before. You planned on her moving the ceremony. When she didn't, you went anyway because you assumed she'd cave like always. That's taken out of context. Dad boomed, but his voice lacked conviction. More family members were joining the call now, and the tide was turning. Aunt Helen, Mom's own sister. Linda, you told me at Easter that you were jealous Catherine was getting all this attention. You said, and I quote, everything's always about Catherine and her big important career. Cousin Tony, Uncle Gerald, you told me at the barbecue that you didn't want to go to some stuffy ceremony where Catherine would be lording her success over everyone. The family secrets started pouring out like water from a broken dam. Diane, in her eagerness to defend our parents, accidentally revealed something huge. Well, maybe if Catherine hadn't always been the golden child, getting all the attention and money for her education, the rest of us wouldn't feel this way. Keith's head snapped toward her. What money? Kat took out loans for everything. She's still paying them off. That's when Mom's mask finally slipped completely. Those loans were paid off 3 years ago. Catherine's been sending us money every month since then. $500 a month for paying us back for raising her. The video call went silent. I stared at the screen in shock. You told Dad I was still paying my loans? You've been taking money from me under false pretenses? Dad turned to Mom, his face a mixture of confusion and growing anger. Linda, you said that money was her loan payments. You said she was struggling and we were helping by not charging interest. Are you telling me she's been sending us $500 a month just because? The family call erupted into chaos, but now the anger wasn't directed at me. Dad was yelling at Mom about hidden money. Diane and Keith were realizing that their college funds had mysteriously disappeared right around the time Mom started her cruise obsession. Cousins were sharing stories of my parents borrowing money for Catherine's education that never made it to me. Uncle Robert's voice cut through again. Catherine, honey, I'm sending you something right now. Check your email. I opened it to find a folder full of photos from my ceremony that he'd hired a professional photographer to take without telling me. There I was, taking my oath, looking dignified and professional. The empty seats where my parents should have been were artfully cropped out. You deserved to have these moments captured, sweetheart. Real family makes sure of that. Grandma Rose delivered the killing blow. I'm changing my will tomorrow. Any inheritance that would have gone to Gerald is going directly to his children. Linda, Gerald, you are no longer welcome at my home for holidays. Catherine, dear, you'll be hosting Christmas this year. Anyone who wants to celebrate with someone who actually values family is welcome to join us. The call devolved into various factions. Some relatives still sided with my parents, insisting I should have been more understanding. Others were firmly Team Catherine, appalled by the revelations of financial manipulation and deliberate sabotage. But the most shocking moment came when Keith spoke up. Kat, I'm sorry. They did the same thing to me. Remember when I got promoted to regional manager? They were supposed to come to the celebration dinner, but they went to a timeshare presentation instead. They said it was more important because they could get a free weekend stay. I never told you because I was embarrassed. Diane, not to be outdone in the Victim Olympics, added her own revelation. They missed my baby's first birthday party for a casino trip. Told me birthdays don't matter until kids can remember them. But they posted pictures from the slots while my daughter cried for her grandparents. The irony of my siblings finally understanding what I'd experienced for years wasn't lost on me, but it didn't erase their eager participation in attacking me just hours before. As the call continued to devolve into accusations and recriminations, I made a decision. I'm done, I said quietly, but firmly enough to cut through the noise. Mom, Dad, you made your choice. You chose a cruise over my federal judgeship ceremony. That tells me everything I need to know about where I rank in your priorities. I'm done begging for crumbs of attention. I'm done paying you money I don't owe. I'm done rearranging my life hoping this time will be different. I'm done. You can't just cut us off. Mom shrieked. We're your parents. We gave you life. And I've spent 36 years trying to repay a debt that can never be satisfied, I responded. I'm a federal judge now. I took an oath to uphold justice. That includes justice for myself. Don't contact me again unless you're ready to genuinely apologize and change. And that means actual change, not just words to get what you want. Dad's face was purple now. If you cut us off, you're out of the will. You'll get nothing. I actually laughed at that. Dad, what will? The house you mortgaged 3 times? The car that's worth less than what you owe? The credit card debt? Keep it all. I'd built my own life without your help. I don't need your money. I needed your love, and you've shown me exactly how much that's worth to you. About the price of a cruise ship cocktail. I ended the call before they could respond, then systematically blocked their numbers, their emails, and their social media accounts. My phone immediately started buzzing with texts from various family members, some supportive, some scandalized, some trying to play peacemaker. I ignored them all. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. The weight I'd been carrying, the constant need for their approval, the endless cycle of hope and disappointment, it all lifted like fog burning off in the morning sun. I was Judge Catherine Morrison. I'd earned that title through my own hard work, determination, and sacrifice. And if my parents couldn't be proud of that, if they couldn't show up for that, then that was their loss, not mine. The next morning brought a fresh hell I hadn't anticipated. Nancy burst into my chambers before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee, her face pale and her hands shaking as she held up her phone. Your Honor, I'm so sorry to bother you, but you need to see this immediately. The screen showed a local morning talk show, and there were my parents, dressed in their finest clothes, sitting on a plush couch across from the sympathetic-looking host. The caption at the bottom read, "Local parents heartbroken after daughter excludes them from federal judge ceremony." My mother was in full performance mode, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief while managing to keep her makeup perfectly intact. "We had no idea the ceremony was happening," she sobbed to the host. "We found out from neighbors while we were on a cruise we'd saved for years to afford." Catherine knew how important this anniversary trip was to us. We scrimped and saved every penny, and she deliberately scheduled her ceremony during the only week we'd be gone. My father, playing the role of stoic but wounded patriarch, added, "We sacrificed everything for her education. Took out second mortgages, worked overtime, went without so she could have her dreams. And this is how she repays us? By sneaking around and having this ceremony without even telling us?" The host made appropriate sympathetic noises, encouraging them to continue their fictional narrative. The lies flew fast and thick. According to my parents, I'd refused to give them the date of the ceremony. I'd blocked their calls when they tried to congratulate me. I'd told them they weren't welcome because I was embarrassed by my working-class roots now that I was a federal judge. They painted a picture of an ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned her loving parents the moment she achieved success. Mom even produced what she claimed were text messages from me telling them not to come, though the camera carefully didn't zoom in close enough to actually read them. The worst part, Mom whimpered, is that we found out our daughter had become a federal judge from our neighbor. Can you imagine? The proudest moment of our lives, and we had to hear about it from strangers while we were thousands of miles away, helpless to get back in time. The host clutched her chest in horror. That must have been devastating. And you had no idea the ceremony was that day? Dad shook his head sadly. Catherine has always been secretive, even as a child. We think success has gone to her head. She's forgotten where she came from, forgotten the little people who made her dreams possible. We just want our daughter back. The segment ended with the host encouraging viewers to remember the importance of family and sharing the station's social media handles for people to share their own stories of ungrateful children. By the time I reached the courthouse, the story had gone viral locally. "Federal judge too important for family," screamed the online headlines. The comments sections were brutal, split between people calling me heartless and others defending me, pointing out inconsistencies in my parents' story. Someone had even started a hashtag Judge Too Good for Family. Nancy had fielded dozens of calls from reporters wanting my side of the story. Chief Judge Reynolds called me into his office before I could even reach my chambers. His expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the concern in his eyes. "Judge Morrison, I want you to know that your personal life is your own business. However, when it starts affecting the perception of the federal judiciary, we need to address it. Are you prepared to handle this situation professionally?" I straightened my shoulders, channeling all the composure I'd learned through years of difficult trials. Chief Judge Reynolds, I have extensive documentation proving my parents were not only aware of the ceremony date but chose to miss it for a vacation. I've attempted no contact with media and have no intention of turning this into a public spectacle. My focus remains on serving this court with integrity. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. I've known you since you were a clerk, Catherine. I know your character. But perception matters in our position. Handle this with the dignity I know you possess. And if you need support, my door is open. The relief I felt at his measured response was overwhelming. At least my professional world wasn't crumbling along with my personal one. But my parents weren't done. As I tried to focus on the cases before me, Nancy interrupted again. This time, they'd shown up at the courthouse with a small crew of reporters and photographers. Security footage showed them in the lobby, my mother weeping dramatically while my father demanded to see our daughter, the judge who abandoned us. Federal marshals were already handling the situation, but the damage was being done. Photos of my parents being turned away from the courthouse spread across social media within minutes. My secretary, bless her, had already drafted a statement for me to review. Judge Morrison is focused on her duties to the federal judiciary and the pursuit of justice. Personal matters remain private, and she will not be commenting on family issues. The courthouse maintains strict security protocols that apply to all visitors equally. It was professional, clean, and gave the media nothing to twist. But I knew it wouldn't stop the narrative my parents were spinning. The colleague WhatsApp group was pinging nonstop. Some of my fellow judges expressed concern, others offered support. Judge Martinez, who'd been sworn in with me, sent a private message. I saw the livestream footage. Your parents are lying through their teeth. If you need witness statements, I'm happy to confirm they weren't there. Judge Chen added, my wife follows your mom on Facebook. She screenshotted all the cruise posts from ceremony day. Just say the word. But it was the message from my law clerk applicants that hit hardest. 3 of the top candidates I'd been considering withdrew their applications, citing concerns about the professional environment and recent controversies. My parents' media campaign was actually affecting my ability to do my job effectively. The fury I felt was white-hot and ice-cold simultaneously. They couldn't be bothered to show up for my success, but they'd gladly destroy it for attention. My phone rang with a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Diane, calling from a friend's phone. Catherine, you need to call them and fix this. Do you see what you've done? Mom had to be sedated after the courthouse turned them away. Dad's talking about suing you for emotional distress. Just apologize and this all goes away. Diane, I said, my voice steady despite my shaking hands, they're lying on national television. They knew about the ceremony. They chose to miss it. Now they're trying to destroy my career because I won't pretend otherwise. And you want me to apologize? Her response was predictable, you've always been so stubborn. Just give them what they want. Is your pride worth destroying our family? Our family destroyed itself when our parents chose a cruise over my federal judgeship, I replied. I'm done enabling their behavior. And if you can't see how toxic this is, then maybe you need to look at your own relationship with them. I hung up before she could respond. Uncle Robert called next, his voice tight with anger. Catherine, I've just come from your grandmother's house. She saw the morning show. She's consulting with her lawyer about making a statement to the media about your parents' real behavior over the years. She's got receipts going back decades. Your mom's own emails bragging about the cruise, talking about how she was glad to miss your boring ceremony. Should we pull the trigger? The temptation was strong. Grandma Rose had evidence that would destroy their narrative completely. But I thought about the cases on my docket, the people depending on me to be a fair and impartial judge, not a tabloid headline. Not yet, I decided. Let me try to handle this quietly first. But keep everything ready. If they escalate further, we may need to defend ourselves. As if on cue, Nancy knocked again. This time, it was a letter from a lawyer. My parents were demanding compensation for emotional distress, defamation, and the deliberate infliction of psychological harm. The letter went on to claim that I had maliciously scheduled my ceremony to exclude them and then launched a campaign of familial alienation. They wanted a public apology, immediate resumption of the monthly payments I'd been making, and a consideration of their pain and suffering to the tune of $50,000. I actually laughed. Then I called Lisa, my best friend from law school who now worked at a top firm. "Remember when you said you owed me for helping you study for the bar? I'm calling in that favor." Within an hour, I had 3 of the city's best attorneys offering pro bono representation. The legal community was small, and word had spread about what my parents were trying to do. Nobody liked seeing a judge, especially a young female judge, being publicly harassed by family. The courthouse security chief stopped by next. "Judge Morrison, we've had to increase security. Your parents have been back 3 times today, each time with different media outlets. We've also intercepted some concerning mail. Nothing threatening yet, but people are taking sides strongly." He handed me a stack of letters, some supportive, some viciously critical of my betrayal of my parents. I tried to focus on work, but concentration was impossible. Every time I looked at a case file, I wondered if the parties had seen the news about me. Would they think I was biased? Unfair? Too distracted by personal drama to give their cases proper attention? My parents weren't just attacking me personally, they were undermining the very thing I'd worked my entire life to achieve. That evening, as I finally left the courthouse through a back entrance to avoid any lingering media, I found Mrs. Chen waiting by my car. She pressed a container of homemade soup into my hands. "I'm so sorry about this morning," she said. "I had no idea they would use me that way. I told that reporter the truth, that you'd reminded your parents about the ceremony for months, but they didn't air that part." Her kindness nearly broke me. "It's not your fault, Mrs. Chen. You were just trying to help." At home, I found more gifts from my parents' campaign. Someone had left nasty notes under my door. My professional Facebook page was flooded with comments from strangers calling me everything from ungrateful brat to worse. 3 neighbors had texted, asking if the stories were true. The violation of having my private life dissected by strangers was overwhelming. But among the hate, there were glimpses of light. Former clients I'd helped sent messages of support. Staff from my previous positions reached out with encouragement. Judge Harrison's wife called to invite me to dinner, away from all this nonsense. My true professional family was rallying around me, even as my biological family tried to tear me down. As I sat in my study that night, reviewing the security reports and lawyer communications, I made a decision. My parents had chosen the nuclear option. They'd decided that if they couldn't share in my success, they'd try to destroy it. But they'd underestimated me. I wasn't the eager-to-please child anymore, desperately seeking their approval. I was Judge Catherine Morrison, and I'd survived worse than their tantrum. Tomorrow, I'd return to the bench with my head high. Let them exhaust themselves with their media circus. Justice didn't stop for family drama, and neither would I. 3 days after the media explosion began, I was working late in my chambers when Nancy's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your Honor, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's a situation in the parking garage. Security is requesting your immediate attention." My stomach dropped. I'd been varying my arrival and departure times, using different entrances, doing everything possible to avoid another ambush. But somehow, they'd found me. The security chief met me at the elevator, his expression grim. "Judge Morrison, your parents are in the garage with about 15 other people. They're calling it an intervention. We can have them removed, but they've technically not violated any laws yet, and there's media present. How would you like us to proceed?" Through the security monitor, I could see them arranged in a semicircle near my assigned parking spot. My parents stood at the center, surrounded by aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't seen in years. Several were holding signs with my childhood photos, messages like "Remember who loved you first" and "Family over fame" printed above them. Are those cameras? I asked, noticing several people holding up phones and what looked like professional recording equipment. The security chief nodded grimly. Yes, Your Honor. They appear to be live streaming. We've also detected what looks like hidden cameras on 3 individuals. This seems coordinated. I made a quick decision. If they wanted to ambush me, I'd face them on my terms. I'm going down there, I said, pulling out my phone. But first, I'm starting my own recording. If they want everything public, then everything will be public, including the truth. The security chief looked concerned but nodded. We'll have marshals nearby, just out of camera view. One signal from you and we'll clear them out. The elevator ride down felt endless. I used the time to center myself, to remember who I was now versus who I'd been. When the doors opened, I walked out with the same confidence I brought to the courtroom. The moment they saw me, the performance began. Mom rushed forward, arms outstretched, wailing, "My baby! My baby girl! Please, just talk to us." I sidestepped her theatrical embrace, keeping my phone visible and recording. "You want to talk?" I said, my voice carrying clearly in the concrete space. "Then let's talk. Let's talk about how you knew about my ceremony date for 6 months. Let's talk about how you deliberately rescheduled your cruise to avoid it. Let's talk about how you're now lying to the media, claiming I kept it secret from you." The crowd stirred uncomfortably, but Mom wasn't deterred. "Catherine, sweetheart, we're here because we love you. These people all love you. We just want our daughter back." "Your daughter?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "When have I ever been your daughter? When you missed my law school graduation for a Vegas trip? When you left my wedding reception early for a football game? When you demanded I pay you $500 a month for the crime of being born? Or when you chose a cruise ship's dinner theater over watching me become the youngest federal judge in district history?" Aunt Martha stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker. "Catherine, dear, your parents made a mistake. But family forgives. Family comes together. You need to stop this nonsense and remember where you came from." I turned to face her directly. I remember exactly where I came from. I came from a 2-bedroom apartment where I studied by candlelight when the power got cut off because the money meant for utilities went to Mom's shopping sprees. I came from wearing the same shoes for 3 years because Dad's betting on sports was more important than his daughter's needs. I came from working 3 jobs to put myself through law school while they told everyone they were paying for it. Should I go on? The crowd's energy shifted. Some of the cousins were exchanging glances, clearly not having heard these details before. But Dad, red-faced and angry, stepped forward. "How dare you air family business like this? Everything we did was for you. Every sacrifice, every hard decision, was to give you a better life." I met his glare steadily. "Really? Was the $60,000 boat you bought while I was eating ramen in law school for me? Were the 15 cruises you've taken in the last 10 years while I was paying off student loans for me? Or let's talk about that emergency loan you needed when I was a first-year prosecutor, the one for Mom's surgery that actually went to your gambling debts?" Diane pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with rage. "You've always been like this, Catherine. Always making everything about you. Always playing the victim. Mom and Dad gave you everything, and you throw it in their faces." I turned to my sister, feeling oddly calm. "Diane, they gave me trauma and debt. Everything I have, I earned myself. And if you want to compare notes, why don't you tell everyone here why you really didn't get to finish college? Was it because you weren't academic, like Mom tells people, or was it because they drained your college fund for their 20th anniversary Mediterranean cruise?" Diane's face went white. "That's not," they said. She turned to our parents, realization dawning. "You told me the money was gone because of Catherine's expenses. You said her law school was too expensive and that's why." Mom cut her off quickly. "Diane, honey, don't let her manipulate you. She's twisting everything, you know how lawyers are. Am I? I pulled up my phone, scrolling to my meticulously organized folder. Let me share some evidence, since we're all here for the truth. I began reading from screenshots. Mom's email to Aunt Helen, dated 5 years ago. Diane thinks her college fund went to Catherine. Better to keep it that way than admit we spent it. Dad's text to Uncle Robert told Keith his car accident settlement went to Catherine's education. Easier than explaining the casino. Should I continue? Keith, who'd been hanging back, suddenly spoke up. Wait, what about my settlement? You said Catherine needed it for the bar exam. The carefully orchestrated intervention was falling apart. Family members were turning to each other, comparing stories, realizing the web of lies they'd been fed. Cousin Marie pulled out her phone, showing others the screenshots she'd saved. I have the photos from the travel agent. They knew. They deliberately chose to miss the ceremony. Mom's mask finally slipped completely. Her tears dried up instantly, replaced by cold fury. You ungrateful little witch, she hissed, the loving mother act abandoned. After everything we did to create you, to shape you, to make you what you are. You owe us everything. Your success is our success. We made you. No, I said quietly, but firmly. You made a child. I made myself into a judge. And the only thing I owe you is the truth, which I'm giving everyone right now. I turned to address the wider group, many of whom were looking increasingly uncomfortable. They've been taking money from me for 3 years under false pretenses. They've been lying to all of you about paying for my education. They've been playing us against each other, using guilt and manipulation to control their children. And when I finally stood up to them, they tried to destroy my career with lies on television. Uncle Mike, Dad's older brother, stepped forward. Gerald, is this true? Did you really miss her ceremony on purpose? You told me she didn't invite you. Dad's face cycled through several emotions before settling on defensive rage. She should have rescheduled it. We had our cruise planned. A good daughter would have understood that. A good daughter, I repeated slowly. Tell me, what's a good parent? Is it one who shows up for their child's achievements? One who doesn't steal from their children's futures? One who doesn't lie on television to destroy their daughter's reputation? Grandma Rose chose that moment to make her entrance, having somehow gotten past security. At 83, using a walker, she still commanded attention. Gerald Morrison, you are a disgrace to your father's memory, she announced, her voice carrying despite her age. Mom, stay out of this, Dad warned, but Grandma Rose wasn't having it. I will not. You're attacking my granddaughter for having the audacity to succeed despite you, not because of you. Catherine, honey, show them the other folder. The one I sent you. With shaking hands, I pulled up the emails Grandma had forwarded. Years of my parents badmouthing me to family, taking credit for my achievements while simultaneously belittling them, asking relatives for money for Catherine's education that never reached me. The real reason they're angry, Grandma continued, is because Catherine's success highlights their failures. They can't stand that she's accomplished something they never could. So they tried to sabotage it, and when that failed, they're trying to destroy it. She looked directly at the hidden cameras several family members were wearing. And if any of you post this footage trying to make Catherine look bad, I'll personally ensure you're all cut from my will. That's a promise. The intervention was in complete collapse. Family members were arguing among themselves, some defending my parents, others expressing outrage at being lied to for years. Mom made one last desperate attempt. Catherine, please. We're your parents. Don't you love us at all? I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. The desperation for her approval, the hurt from her rejections, the anger at her manipulations, it had all burned away, leaving only emptiness. I loved the parents I thought I had, I answered honestly. The ones who were proud of me, who supported my dreams, who showed up when it mattered. But those parents never existed, did they? You're just two people who happened to conceive me and then spent 36 years making me pay for it. I'm done paying. Dad stepped forward aggressively, and the hidden federal marshals tensed, ready to intervene. You walk away from us now, and you're dead to us. No inheritance, no family, nothing. You'll be alone forever. I smiled sadly. Dad, I've been alone my whole life. I just didn't realize it until I stood in that empty courtroom. The difference is, now I'm choosing solitude over toxicity. And I'm not alone. I have Uncle Robert, Grandma Rose, friends who've become my real family, colleagues who respect me, and a career I've built with my own hands. What do you have? A web of lies that's finally unraveling, and 2 children who are starting to see through your manipulation. Security finally stepped in as voices rose and the confrontation threatened to turn physical. As the marshals began dispersing the crowd, Mom shouted one last manipulation: when we're old and sick, don't come crawling back. Don't expect us to forgive you. I turned back one final time. I won't. And I don't need your forgiveness. I need healing from the damage you've caused, and that starts with never seeing you again. As I walked back to the elevator, Uncle Robert fell into step beside me. You okay, kiddo? I considered the question honestly. You know what? I am. For the first time in my life, I actually am. Behind us, the sound of family arguments echoed through the parking garage, the empire of manipulation my parents had built finally crumbling under the weight of truth. Tomorrow, there would be more media coverage, more public drama, more attempts at guilt and control. But tonight, I was free. The confrontation I'd dreaded for years was over, and I was still standing. More than that, I was standing taller than ever, unburdened by the need for approval from people who were incapable of giving it. The security chief met us at the elevator, a small smile on his usually stern face. Judge Morrison, I've been doing this for 20 years. That was the most dignified handling of a family ambush I've ever witnessed. As the elevator doors closed, I realized he was right. I'd faced them with dignity, truth, and strength. Everything they'd tried to tear down in me had only grown stronger. And tomorrow, I'd return to my courtroom, ready to serve justice with the same integrity I'd shown tonight. The family I'd lost had never really been mine. But the future I'd built? That was all mine, and no amount of manipulation could take it away. The first month after cutting contact with my parents felt like learning to breathe without a weight on my chest. Each morning I woke up without the familiar dread of checking my phone for their latest crisis or demand was a small miracle. The media storm had eventually died down after Grandma Rose gave a single, devastating interview where she calmly presented years of evidence of my parents' behavior. The public narrative shifted overnight from ungrateful daughter to toxic parents exposed, but by then, I'd stopped caring about public opinion. I had work to do, justice to serve, and a life to rebuild. My therapy sessions with Dr. Williams became a cornerstone of my healing. You're grieving, she explained during one particularly difficult session. Not the parents you had, but the parents you deserved and never got. That's a profound loss, and it's okay to mourn it. We worked through decades of manipulation, the constant gaslighting, the way I'd been trained to prioritize their needs above my own. Each session peeled back another layer of damage, revealing the person I might have been without their toxic influence. The most surprising part was how my career flourished once I stopped carrying their drama. Without the constant emotional drain, I found new energy for my cases. My rulings became sharper, my patience in the courtroom deeper. The law clerks who'd withdrawn their applications reapplied, explaining they'd been impressed by how I'd handled the public scrutiny. I hired the best of them, building a chambers that operated like a well-oiled machine, efficient and supportive in ways my family never was. 3 months into my new life, my parents made one final, desperate attempt. They showed up during a high-profile case I was presiding over, sitting in the public gallery. Security was ready to remove them, but I made a different choice. I continued the proceedings as if they weren't there, giving them exactly what they'd given me during my ceremony: absence of acknowledgement. They left after 20 minutes, finally understanding that their power over me was truly broken. The bailiff later told me my mother had been crying, but they weren't tears of manipulation this time. They were tears of realization. The ripple effects on my siblings were fascinating to watch. Diane, after months of continued loyalty to our parents, finally reached her breaking point when they missed her daughter's kindergarten graduation for another cruise. She called me crying, apologizing for years of enabling them, admitting she'd been jealous of my success but now understood it came despite them, not because of them. We began slowly rebuilding our relationship, both of us in therapy, both of us learning what sisterhood could look like without toxic parents pulling the strings. Keith took longer to come around. He'd invested so much in being the good son, the one who didn't rock the boat, that accepting the truth about our parents meant rebuilding his entire identity. When he finally called, it was to tell me he'd discovered they'd remortgaged their house using his credit without his knowledge. The golden child status came with its own price, apparently. We met for coffee, two damaged siblings comparing scars and slowly learning to trust each other again. Judge Harrison and his wife became unexpected anchors in my new life. They invited me to their family gatherings, where I learned what healthy family dynamics looked like. Their adult daughters welcomed me like a sister, and holiday dinners at their table showed me that families could disagree without manipulation, could celebrate each other's successes without jealousy. "You're part of our chosen family now," Margaret told me one evening. "Family isn't just blood. It's who shows up." That phrase became my mantra as I built my new support system. Uncle Robert never missed a milestone, attending every significant case, every award ceremony, every professional achievement. Grandma Rose moved closer to spend her remaining years near the grandchildren who actually wanted her in their lives. We established new traditions, Sunday dinners where stories were shared without guilt trips, holidays where presence was appreciated but never demanded. A year after the ceremony, I was invited to speak at the National Bar Association's annual conference about overcoming personal adversity in professional settings. I stood before 500 lawyers and judges, sharing my story without shame. "Success despite adversity isn't about forgetting where you came from," I said. "It's about choosing where you're going, regardless of who tries to hold you back." The standing ovation was gratifying, but the young lawyers who approached afterward, sharing their own stories of family trauma and professional triumph, reminded me why visibility mattered. My personal life, frozen for years under my parents' critical gaze, began to thaw. I started dating Marcus, a fellow judge who understood both the demands of the bench and the complexity of family estrangement. He had his own story of choosing career over family expectations, and our shared understanding created a foundation of mutual respect. "You're the strongest person I know," he told me after meeting my chosen family at Thanksgiving. "Not because you endured them, but because you had the courage to walk away." The financial freedom was another revelation. Without the monthly payments to my parents, the constant emergency loans, the guilt-driven spending on their wants, I discovered I had more than enough. I established a scholarship at my law school for students from difficult family backgrounds. The first recipient, a young woman whose parents had disowned her for choosing law over the family business, sent me a letter that made me cry. The cycle of support could flow forward, helping others escape their own toxic situations. The speaking invitation that meant the most came from the Federal Judicial Conference. They wanted me to address new judges about maintaining professional dignity during personal crises. I spoke about the importance of boundaries, the strength in choosing justice over family when family chose manipulation over love. Chief Judge Reynolds introduced me, calling me an example of grace under pressure and integrity in the face of adversity. The girl who'd stood alone at her swearing-in was now teaching others how to stand strong. My parents, I heard through the family grapevine, were struggling. Their victim narrative had collapsed, their flying monkeys had deserted them, and they were left with the consequences of their choices. They'd lost not just one daughter but eventually all their children, as both Diane and Keith established firm boundaries. Their cruise friends, tired of the constant drama and negativity, distanced themselves. They had each other, but without scapegoats to blame for their unhappiness, that relationship was strained too. Part of me pitied them. During a session with Dr. Williams, I explored this unexpected emotion. It's not forgiveness, she clarified. It's the pity you'd feel for anyone trapped in their own toxicity. You can feel sorry for them while still maintaining boundaries. Compassion from a distance is still compassion. I sent them one final letter, not seeking reconciliation but offering closure. I wished them well, hoped they'd find peace, but made clear that their journey would be without me. They never responded, which was its own kind of answer. The real celebration came exactly 1 year after my solitary swearing-in. Uncle Robert organized a surprise party at the courthouse, somehow getting permission to use the same ceremonial courtroom. This time, the seats were full of people who'd supported me through the aftermath, colleagues, mentors, chosen family, friends who'd become siblings. Judge Harrison administered a mock oath while everyone laughed, and Grandma Rose insisted on giving a speech that included at least 3 embarrassing childhood stories, but only the good kind. A year ago, Uncle Robert said during his toast, Catherine stood in this room alone but not broken. Today, she stands here surrounded by people who love her not for what she can do for them, but for who she is. That's the difference between real family and blood relatives. Real family celebrates your success without making it about them. Real family shows up not because they have to, but because they can't imagine being anywhere else. As I looked around the room at faces beaming with genuine pride and affection, I felt the last piece of grief dissolve. My parents had missed my swearing-in, but they'd missed so much more than that. They'd missed knowing the woman I'd become, missed being part of a journey that led to this moment, missed the joy of watching someone they claimed to love achieve their dreams. Their loss was profound, but it was theirs to carry. My phone, silent for months where they were concerned, buzzed with a message from Marcus. Watching you shine in your element, surrounded by people who truly see you, is the most beautiful thing I've witnessed. Thank you for letting me be part of your chosen family. As I read it, Diane appeared at my elbow, nervous but smiling. Kat, I know I don't deserve to be here, but thank you for including me in your real celebration. I'm learning what family should look like by watching yours. The evening ended with a group photo in front of the bench, everyone crowding in, laughing as we tried to fit 30 people into frame. The court photographer joked that this was the largest family photo he'd taken for a single judge. Looking at the final image later, I saw what had been missing from every childhood photo: genuine joy, unconditional support, and the security of knowing these people would show up not because of obligation, but because of love. 6 months later, I received word that my parents had sold their house and moved to a retirement community in Florida. They'd told neighbors they needed a fresh start, somewhere their ungrateful children couldn't hurt them anymore. The victim narrative continued, but without an audience who believed it. Their new neighbors, unaware of the history, apparently found them exhausting and avoided them. The golden years they'd prioritized over their children's milestones were tarnished by their own bitterness. Meanwhile, my life continued to expand in ways their presence would have prevented. I took on more complex cases, published articles in legal journals, mentored young lawyers from difficult backgrounds. The scholarship fund grew through donations from others who'd overcome family trauma. Diane and I co-hosted family dinners where our kids, her biological children and my ments, learned that love didn't require manipulation, that support didn't come with strings attached. Your Honor, Nancy said one morning, bringing in a stack of letters from law students who'd heard me speak about family estrangement and professional success. You're making a difference. One letter stood out, from a young man whose parents had threatened to disown him for choosing public defense over corporate law. Your story gave me courage, he wrote. To know that someone could lose their family and gain themselves, could stand alone in their biggest moment and still stand tall, it changed everything for me. As I prepared for another day on the bench, adjusting the robes I'd once worn in an empty ceremony, I reflected on the journey. My parents had missed my swearing-in, but in doing so, they'd given me an unexpected gift. They'd shown me who I was without them, strong, capable, worthy of real love and support. They'd forced me to find my chosen family, the people who celebrated my success without claiming credit, who showed up without keeping score. The empty seats at my ceremony would always be part of my story, but they no longer defined it. Those seats had been filled by people who chose to be there, not out of obligation but out of love. My parents missed my swearing in, but I hadn't missed anything. I'd gained everything that mattered: self-respect, genuine relationships, and the knowledge that success tastes sweetest when shared with those who love you for who you are, not what you achieve. The calls had exploded that day, but from the ashes of that explosion, I'd built a life more beautiful than anything their conditional love could have offered. And every morning, as I put on my robes and prepared to serve justice, I did so knowing that the only approval I needed was my own. The oath I'd taken alone that day had been witnessed by the only person who needed to hear it, myself. And that, more than any family gathering, was worth celebrating. So what about you? Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own dreams? How do you balance loyalty to those who raised you with loyalty to yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in choosing their own path. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about triumph over adversity, and remember, family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when it matters most. Thank you for being part of my chosen family here on this channel. Until next time, keep standing tall in your truth, even if you're standing alone.